She was invited there. She did not just pop up there.
In the early morning hours of July 18th, 2023, what started as a normal evening ended in a heartbreaking loss that sent shockwaves through the community of Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a story of love, betrayal, and a deadly misunderstanding that left family and friends shattered, struggling to piece together what went so horribly wrong. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment to send our deepest condolences to the family of Tyra Shanell Crosby, especially her mother, Tanya Hoskins. Tanya has shown immense strength and courage in her ongoing fight for justice. No parent should ever endure such a tragedy. Losing a child is a pain that words cannot describe. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Tanya, and to everyone whose lives were touched by Tyra. On the night of July 17th, 2023, Tyra made what seemed like an innocent decision: to meet up with a man who had invited her to a house in Northwest Charlotte. She thought it was just a casual night out, unaware that this decision would place her in an unimaginable situation. The man who invited her to the house was married, but Tyra had no idea. The house on Porter Street belonged to him and his wife, Stephanie Alexander. In the early morning hours, Stephanie returned home unexpectedly and found Tyra inside. The situation spiraled out of control within moments, with fatal consequences. In the heat of the moment, believing Tyra was an intruder, Stephanie Alexander pulled out a gun and fired. A single gunshot changed everything. Police received a frantic 911 call from Stephanie, who claimed she had shot an unknown woman in her home. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Tyra with a gunshot wound. Tragically, it was too late. She was pronounced dead on the spot. The Charlotte community woke up to the heartbreaking news, struggling to understand how such a tragedy could happen. At first, Stephanie Alexander was charged with voluntary manslaughter. But as the investigation unfolded, more details came to light, and the charges were upgraded to second-degree murder. The question now was this truly a case of mistaken identity, or was there something more to this story? Tyra's mother, Tanya, has been relentless in her search for justice. She has spoken out, making it clear that Tyra was not at fault, emphasizing that her daughter was innocent and unaware of the complex situation she had walked into. Tanya described it as every mother's worst nightmare. A call in the middle of the night with news that your child is gone forever. This story is not just about what happened that night. It's also about a mother's love and determination to uncover the truth. Tanya continues to advocate for her daughter, ensuring that Tyra's voice is heard and her memory is never forgotten. Charlotte, North Carolina, is one of the fastest-growing cities in the U.S., known for its southern charm, rich history, and vibrant culture. It's the largest city in North Carolina, with a population of nearly 1 million people. The city offers something for everyone, from its bustling downtown filled with modern skyscrapers to quiet, tree-lined neighborhoods. Known as the Queen City, Charlotte is a hub for business and finance, with major banks calling it home. But beneath its shiny exterior, like many cities, Charlotte faces its share of challenges. Crime is a reality for the city's residents. While some areas are relatively peaceful, others have seen a rise in violent incidents. In 2023, Charlotte was already grappling with concerns about gun violence. According to public records, the city reported several homicides that year, and the community was growing increasingly alarmed. No one could have predicted that one of those tragic incidents would involve Tyra Shanell Crosby, a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. Tyra Shanell Crosby was 25 years old. She was bright, outgoing, and full of energy. Her family and friends described her as spontaneous, always up for an adventure and full of life. She had a contagious smile that could light up any room. Tyra wasn't just fun to be around. She was also kind and caring, always putting others first. She had dreams, plans for her future, and the love and support of her family. Tyra's mother, Tanya Hoskins, spoke of her daughter with pride and affection, remembering her as a young woman who loved life and made every moment count. But those dreams would be cruelly taken away on that fateful night in July. Then there's Stephanie Alexander. She was 51 years old, a married woman who lived in a house on Porter Street in Northwest Charlotte. From the outside, Stephanie's life seemed stable. She was a homeowner and part of the community. But what no one knew at the time was that her life was about to change forever. Stephanie's decision that night would not only affect her life, but also tear apart another family's world. In the early hours of July 18, 2023, fate brought Tyra and Stephanie together in a moment that would end in tragedy. What led up to that moment is a mix of misunderstanding, poor decisions, and emotions that spiraled out of control. Charlotte, a city known for its resilience, was left shaken. This was not just another crime. It was something that hit the community hard. A young woman lost her life in a place where she should have been safe, and a family was left to pick up the pieces. It was just a typical night for Tyra. She had no reason to think anything unusual would happen. She didn't know it would be her last night alive. Sometime during the evening, Tyra received an invitation to visit a house on Porter Street in Northwest Charlotte. The man she was meeting seemed friendly enough. To her, it was just another casual hangout, nothing out of the ordinary. But what Tyra didn't know was that this house was not just his. It belonged to him and his wife, Stephanie Alexander. As the night wore on, everything seemed calm. The house was quiet, the neighborhood still. Tyra had no idea what was about to unfold in the early morning hours. Around 5 a.m., Stephanie Alexander came home from work. She was tired and ready to unwind after a long night. All she wanted was to grab a quick shower and get some rest. She wasn't expecting anything unusual when she walked into the house that morning. But the moment she stepped inside, something felt off. As she walked toward her bedroom, Stephanie noticed movement. She pushed the door open and was immediately confronted with a sight she never expected. Her husband was in bed with Tyra Shanell Crosby. It was a moment of pure shock. Confusion and anger surged through Stephanie as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Tyra, unaware of the full situation, had no time to react. Stephanie, overwhelmed with emotion, confronted her husband. Heated words were exchanged. The tension in the room grew thicker by the second. The argument escalated quickly. Stephanie's confusion turned into panic and rage. What happened next would change everything forever. In the chaos, Stephanie grabbed a gun. Her mind was racing, her emotions completely out of control. In one fateful moment, she pulled the trigger. Tyra was shot. The room fell silent. In an instant, everything changed. Stephanie stood there in shock, trying to process what had just happened. Tyra lay on the floor, fatally wounded. The gravity of the situation sank in as reality hit hard. In her panic, Stephanie called 911. Her voice was frantic as she told the operator that she had shot someone. The minutes that followed felt like an eternity. Stephanie remained inside the house, waiting for the authorities to arrive. The dispatcher assured her that help was on the way. But there was nothing more that could be done for Tyra. For Tyra, a bright and vibrant life was cut tragically short. And for Stephanie, a single decision in a moment of rage would lead to devastating consequences. The Charlotte community woke up to the shocking news that day. Questions began swirling. Was this really a tragic mistake? Or was there more to the story? What had truly happened inside that house on Porter Street? Moments later, police officers and emergency responders arrived at the house on Porter Street. They found Tyra unresponsive on the floor. Medical personnel quickly assessed her condition, but it was already too late. Tyra was pronounced dead at the scene. The officers secured the house and immediately took Stephanie Alexander into custody. The once quiet neighborhood was now buzzing with flashing lights, sirens, and the presence of investigators trying to piece together what had just happened. Stephanie sat quietly in the back of the patrol car, her expression blank. What had seemed like an ordinary morning had turned into a nightmare. Back inside the house, detectives began their work, photographing the scene, collecting evidence, and trying to understand how an ordinary confrontation had ended in tragedy. Tyra's death sent shockwaves through the community. How could such a bright life end so suddenly? And what had really happened during those tense, chaotic moments inside the house? The investigation into Tyra Shanell Crosby's death began immediately after the tragic events of that early July morning. Charlotte police worked tirelessly to piece together what had happened inside the house on Porter Street. Detectives interviewed Stephanie Alexander, her husband, neighbors, and others who knew both women. They needed answers. How did a confrontation escalate to the point of no return? Stephanie was cooperative during the investigation, but her story was full of emotional highs and lows. She admitted to the shooting but claimed it was not premeditated. Detectives took a close look at every detail: the 911 call, the physical evidence in the house, and the timeline leading up to the shooting. They also spoke to neighbors who had heard the commotion that morning. Some reported hearing raised voices, while others described the shock they felt seeing police and emergency services swarming their usually quiet street. Family and friends of Tyra were also interviewed. They described her as a bright, loving 25-year-old with her whole future ahead of her. Her death left many unanswered questions and a community in mourning. It didn't take long for prosecutors to file formal charges. Stephanie Alexander was initially charged with second-degree murder, a serious charge that could have resulted in a lengthy prison sentence if she were convicted. As the legal process unfolded, both sides began preparing for what seemed like an inevitable trial. But in a surprising turn of events, Stephanie's defense team negotiated a plea deal with the prosecution. Stephanie agreed to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter, admitting responsibility for Tyra's death while maintaining that the shooting had been the result of extreme emotional distress. By accepting the plea deal, Stephanie avoided the uncertainty of a trial and the possibility of a harsher sentence. In the courtroom, emotions ran high during the sentencing. Family members from both sides were present, and many could barely hold back their tears. Tyra's family sat quietly, holding one another for support. Her mother, Tanya Hoskins, listened with a heavy heart as the judge handed down the sentence. Stephanie Alexander was sentenced to serve 60 to 84 months in prison, equivalent to 5 to 7 years. The judge's words were final, and with that, the courtroom fell into silence. Stephanie stood quietly as she was led away, her face a mixture of regret and resignation. For Tyra's family, the sentence felt like a small measure of justice, but no amount of prison time could ever bring Tyra back. The case was officially closed, but the pain remained. For the Charlotte community, this tragedy served as a sobering reminder of how quickly emotions can lead to irreversible consequences. The emotional impact of Tyra Shanell Crosby's death was felt far beyond the walls of that house on Porter Street. For her family, life would never be the same again. Tyra's mother, Tanya Hoskins, spoke openly about the pain of losing her only daughter. In an emotional interview, Tanya described Tyra as a loving, kind, and vibrant young woman who brought joy to everyone she met. She was the light of their family, a woman with big dreams and a heart full of compassion. Tanya recalled how Tyra always went out of her way to help others. Whether it was lending a hand to a friend in need or simply bringing a smile to someone's face, Tyra's presence made a difference. Losing her was more than a personal tragedy. It was a loss for everyone who knew and loved her. The Charlotte community rallied around the family, holding vigils in Tyra's memory. Friends, neighbors, and strangers gathered to honor her life, lighting candles and sharing stories of the joy she brought into the world. A local park became a gathering spot for those mourning her loss, filled with flowers, photos, and handwritten messages of love and support. One vigil, held just weeks after her passing, brought out dozens of people. As candles flickered in the night, Tanya stood before the crowd, her voice steady despite her grief. She thanked the community for their support and spoke passionately about the importance of remembering her daughter for the vibrant person she was, not just a victim of tragedy. In the months following Tyra's death, Tanya found strength in advocacy. She turned her pain into purpose, speaking out about the dangers of intimate partner violence and urging young women to recognize the warning signs in their relationships. Tanya worked tirelessly to spread awareness, attending community events, partnering with local organizations, and sharing Tyra's story as a powerful example of how quickly life can change. Her message was clear: no one should ever feel trapped or unsafe, and it's never too late to seek help. Through her advocacy, Tanya hoped to honor her daughter's memory by helping others. Though nothing could ever bring Tyra back, Tanya's voice became a beacon of hope for those facing similar situations. a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is strength to be found in speaking out and standing up for what's right. Tyra Shanell Crosby's story is one of tragedy, but it is also a story of love, remembrance, and resilience. While her life was cut short, her memory lives on through the hearts of her family, friends, and a mother determined to make a difference. The story of Tyra Shanell Crosby is a heartbreaking reminder of how a single moment can change lives forever. It's a tragedy born out of unchecked emotions, betrayal, and the inability to find a peaceful resolution in a volatile situation. Infidelity can tear apart relationships, leaving deep emotional wounds. But no matter the pain, violence is never the answer. In moments of anger and heartbreak, it's crucial to take a step back and seek help rather than letting emotions take control. Stephanie Alexander's actions were driven by rage and betrayal, but they came at an irreversible cost: one life lost, and another changed forever. This tragedy left a family shattered and a community grieving. It serves as a painful reminder that decisions made in the heat of the moment can have lifelong consequences. For Tyra's family, the pain of her loss will never fade. But from that pain, her mother, Tanya Hoskins, has found a way to turn tragedy into purpose. Through her advocacy, she is fighting to ensure that no one else has to endure the same heartbreak. There are important lessons to be learned from this story. We must be mindful of our emotional reactions and seek peaceful ways to resolve conflicts. If you ever find yourself in a situation where anger or hurt feels overwhelming, reach out for help. Talk to a trusted friend, counselor, or hotline before making a decision that you can't take back. It's also vital to be aware of red flags in relationships, signs of toxic behavior, manipulation, or potential danger. Know that help is available. If you or someone you know is in an unsafe relationship or struggling with overwhelming emotions, please reach out to resources that can provide support. Thank you for joining us in sharing Tyra's story. While we can't change the past, we can honor her memory by learning from this tragedy and supporting those in need. If you found this story impactful, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories and important conversations. Stay safe, take care of one another, and we'll see you next time.